Now we're going to talk about the testing stage of the mentoring relationship. A little quirk here that almost every mentoring relationship is going to go through a testing stage, and in fact should, in some sense. The child needs to figure out that you're in this for sure, that you really bought in, that you're in it for the long haul. They might expect some inconsistency to test you to see if you're the real deal, and so they've got to test you a little bit to find out if you're really committed. One of the things that you want to be aware of, and this is not true of all the mentees in our program, I want to be careful to say that many of the mentees in our program come from very healthy family situations where perhaps mom and dad are just working shift work or just overwhelmed with a set of triplets or something like that, and they're needing a mentor just simply because they need some one-on-one attention from somebody who can help them with things. So I want to make sure that that little caveat is out there, that not all of our children come from dysfunctional situations. But there might be some kids out there for whom abandonment is the norm. And if it feels normal to them, you need to know that they're going to try to establish normalcy in your relationship. And what that means is that they're going to start to inject factors into your relationship that will drive you away. If abandonment is what they are most used to, they will try to put you in a situation where you're going to want out. And that's just something to be aware of. When you see it, it's much easier to deal with if you know what it is. They're simply trying to reestablish something that feels more normal to them. Your commitment to them doesn't feel normal. It's healthy and good and necessary, but it doesn't feel normal to them. And so you've got to understand they aren't really trying to be evil. They're just trying to find a sense of normalcy in this situation that doesn't seem normal to them. So at that point, and this is a little bit age specific, as you know, the more you get into the middle school and high school years, the more you're going to see this kind of thing. But what you'll do is you'll start to have some missed appointments, missed phone calls, not returned phone calls, maybe some unreasonable requests. I've had mentees that have all of a sudden demanded that their mentor buy them a new pair of, Asics or something, running shoes or something like that, just to test to see whether or not that relationship is going to stick. And so you need to be aware that some of these curveballs are going to come at you, and that they're coming at you for good reason, and you're enduring them is going to be really, really meritorious. Some angry and sullen behavior is likely to crop up at this point. You may find you had one week you had a very pleasant, very interactive mentee, and then the next week you get together over a Coke and you've got crossed arms and a scowl and a hunched shoulders and zero answers to any of your questions, and the only answer you get is, I'm sick and tired of answering your silly questions or something like that. And those kinds of things are by design. The child is scared to death of losing something that's becoming important to them, and so they're going to try to push you away to prove to themselves whether or not their fears are founded. And if you stop for a minute, you can understand why they have to go through this little game to establish whether or not they're going to lose you or whether or not you're going to hang in there. The issue is not whether or not the child likes you or the young adult likes you. That is not the issue. They like you. You're kind to them. They're drawn to you. They don't want to do what they're doing, but they're testing to see whether or not this relationship is going to make it. Understand also, if they come from one end of the spectrum where the families are in great flux, they are going to have people moving in and out of their home all the time. There are going to be phones that are cut off and disconnected and reconnected, and different phone numbers. I have some mentees who have had 4 different phone numbers over the course of their mentoring relationship. It can get a little nuts, but that's where you have to be resourceful and you have to be committed and make it work. And by the way, if you can't get a hold of your mentee, that's what the school counselor's job is to go find that child, find out the good phone numbers, find out if they've changed, or just find out what's going on. Why is it that you can't get a hold of your mentee? We want that answer, and we don't want you to wait a month to tell us, I'm having trouble finding my kiddo. We want you to tell us right away that the phone numbers aren't working and I can't get a hold of so-and-so. All right, some don't eat regularly. One of the interesting things is that some of our mentees get to every single mentoring appointment hungry. I found out from one mentor that their child was eating ramen noodles every single night for supper alone, and this was a 3rd grader. That was what the child was eating every night for supper, and every once in a while the child would muster up the courage to call the mentor and say, I'm hungry, and I want you to let us know if that's going on. There are businesses in the area that will give us some coupons. There are businesses services. It'll give us a grant to buy you some food coupons. If you're feeding your kiddo, let us know if you're spending a lot of money, and we'll find a way to help you out with that. Families are in flux. Just remember, the predictability in this stage, this testing stage, breeds trust. They want you to win. Trust me. They want you to come out on top in that one. They don't want to be the one that succeeded in driving you away. Please be consistent, remain accountable, find somebody to visit with that can keep you encouraged. It's a difficult time, but you are going into a relationship that is by design pretty one-sided. And so we need you to understand that if you need some support and encouragement, you've got to gather that around yourself from some other venue, not from the mentee. Get it from somebody in the program, get it from some of your good True North friends that can say what you're doing is important. Make sure you have some support mechanisms in place, because that kid at that testing stage is going to drain you, and you're going to need some things in place. Just know that one small misstep in this testing stage can cost you greatly. If you can continue to be prepared and understanding and refrain from personalizing it, you're going to make it through this period, and you'll make it by taking a lot of territory. And you want to do that not just for the sake of the relationship, but for the sake of the child, who is also waiting to see whether or not this is going to work. There is an appendix, a page in your appendix called Internal and External Roadblocks. We'd like you to take a look at that on your own time. We have some internal roadblocks to continuing the relationship too that you're going to have to break through: exhaustion, feeling overwhelmed, that kind of thing. And we want you to be able to look at those resources to address those. During that testing stage, there are some hints and suggestions that you see there on the screen that are very, very important. Things like, go ahead and talk about the problem with the child if you feel like it's something that needs to be discussed. Plan ahead of time what it is that you're going to say. Bring it up early in the visit. One thing that we found is a very good technique: if you need to talk with your child about something that's kind of challenging or difficult, sandwich the concern between two compliments. Make sure that you take that sandwich effect so that you soften the entry time into that conversation with something affirming and validating. Then you have the difficult conversation, and then you end the conversation with another affirmation. Just even that they would have the courage to have the conversation with you is something that you can affirm. That they would show up to the appointment. Anything to end on a positive note with that kiddo. So another trick in this testing juncture, in addition to staying serious and supportive and sensitive, another trick is to relate something personal. Relate an experience where you yourself face something difficult that the child might be able to relate to. It kind of takes you off of that pedestal, if you will, and makes you much more human. Maybe you relate a mistake that you've made or something that you've not done right. Maybe you can even relate a time that you related to somebody who cared for you in the same way that your mentee is relating with you, and say, I remember a time when I did this kind of thing, and it turned out this way for me, and I'm wondering how you're feeling about that. So kind of relate something, a weakness of yours maybe, that they might be able to identify with. Other pitfalls that can happen during this testing period: if the match doesn't seem right, you need to communicate with us. If the youth simply comes to the place where they just stay stuck in that testing period because they cannot trust you because of their own baggage, they just can't seem to get beyond that, you need to let us know. If the youth moves, you need to let us know. If you feel overwhelmed or incapable, you need to let us know. Some will be more challenging than others. I've been asked by the school counselors to make sure that I tell you that some of your kids are going to pose some real challenges. The school counselors are well prepared to have that conversation with you as to how to troubleshoot that with them about how to best help your children. But at all costs, don't just decide that this is too hard, and please don't go away. That's what the child is trying to find out if you're going to do, and we don't want the answer to be that you went away. This is the goal-setting stage. This is when your hard work really starts to pay off. You want to be working and identifying towards short-term goals. They're important to the friendship. They're important to the friendship gaining and maintaining momentum. You want to have some short and long-term projects in the mill with your child, some things that they might want to be working on with you. It breeds anticipation and a sense of security that you're not going away if you have some long-term goals together. Now, the reason this is the best part is you can start talking in October with your mentee about whether or not they'd like to start working on anything for Christmas, for their family. One suggestion I've made to some of our mentors is that they go to a place like Goodwill or to the Restore and find something that they might fix with their mentee that they can then present to their family as a Christmas present. Costs you very little money, it'll eat up scads of mentoring time, and it builds a skill into their life. And that brings me to our next module, and that is this whole idea of asset building. We want you to be master asset builders. We're going to take some time now to familiarize you with this concept of assets or asset building into the life of a youth. This is a significant piece of the effort to help youth become functional, healthy, contributing adults. I want you to become familiar with this because there's a lot of research out there that supports that this is one of the best things you can learn as a mentor. The Search Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota has done a significant amount of research indicating that there are ways to build into a youth's life that are measurable and successful. And we want to put some of these tools into your hands so that you know kind of where to go and how to build into this child's life or this young adult's life and know that it's going to make a difference. I want to start out with the question, what is an asset? An asset, according to the Search Institute, is something like a nutrient. It's something like a building block that is necessary for that youth to grow into a strong and contributing, healthy individual, caring and responsible, a contributing member of the community. That's our goal, of course, as mentors, is to help our kids get there. And the Search Institute has developed a list of 40 developmental assets that are actually measurable, that you can actually tell whether or not they're present in a young person's life and the degree to which they're present, how they might be developed. They're nutrients that are necessary for a child to grow in strong in mind and character, and they give you a direction as to where you can focus your goals and development. These developmental assets have been broken down into two categories. The first are known as internal assets. Internal assets would be characteristics and behaviors that reflect positive internal motivators, growth and development, a person's own commitment, their own values and competencies. Internal attributes, internal assets can be things like a commitment to learning, a desire to learn new things, a positive value, a social competency, and a positive self-identity, self-esteem as we more commonly know it. Those are internal assets. And again, it's easy to measure those when a child answers certain questions. External assets are the people and places that support and guide young people, help them make constructive use of their time. They're positive developmental experiences that surround this child. They fall in the categories of the kind of support the child has from family, extended family, church, community, that kind of thing. They empower the child from the outside. It has to do with things like boundaries and expectations and how they relate to the outside world. And in addition, the external assets encompass the constructive use of time. This is a place where a mentor can make a significant difference in a youth's life. I want to quote directly from some of the research from the Search Institute material. Research has shown that the more assets young people have, the more likely they are to be leaders in community, succeed in school, and maintain good health. These are all outcomes that we want for our youth. It also makes them, by the way, more likely to resist at-risk behaviors, such as the one you saw listed earlier in this production, the at-risk behaviors of sexual activity, drinking, substance abuse, self-abuse, that kind of thing. And so the increased number of assets in a youth's life diminishes their likelihood that they're going to become involved in that kind of thing. Now, I have to ask myself, why is this concept so significant to mentoring? I've done quite a bit of reading on this area and have come to the conclusion that the research supports that if you as a mentor can increase the number of assets in a child's life by 3 or 4 out of this list of 40, you significantly increase the likelihood that they will be involved in healthy, productive activities. conversely said, you decrease the likelihood that they'll be involved in at-risk behaviors. Let me give you an example.